The bank statement smelled like betrayal, that sterile paper scent mixed with the coffee I'd spilled when my hands started shaking. I'm Sarah Mitchell, and up until 3 hours ago, I thought I had a decent life. Not perfect, but decent. A husband of 15 years. A beautiful 12-year-old daughter. A house in the suburbs with a garden I actually maintained. I taught second grade at Riverside Elementary, came home to family dinners, helped with homework, lived the dream everyone said I should want. Turns out, I'd been living in a carefully constructed lie. $0.43. That's what the college fund statement said. 12 years of saving every birthday check, every tax return, every bonus. Gone. I sat at our kitchen table, the one David insisted we buy from that expensive furniture store downtown, and the afternoon light cut across the marble countertop in harsh lines that made my eyes hurt. Or maybe that was the crying. I couldn't tell anymore. My chest felt compressed, like someone had reached inside and squeezed everything vital into a ball too small to function. The numbers on the page kept blurring, swimming in and out of focus, but they didn't change no matter how many times I blinked. Madison's future. Erased. My phone buzzed against the table, the vibration obscenely loud in the quiet house. Unknown number. Just a photo. David's arm draped around a woman who looked maybe 25, with perfect beach wave highlights and a smile that screamed victory. They were somewhere tropical. Palm trees. Bright blue water. She wore my anniversary earrings. The diamond studs he'd given me for our 10th anniversary, the ones he said cost a fortune, the ones that meant he'd never stop loving me. I made a sound. Not quite a sob, not quite a scream. Something broken and animal that I didn't recognize as coming from my own throat. Footsteps in the hallway. Quick and light. Mom. I tried to hide the statement, actually crumpled it in my fist, but my hands were shaking too hard to do it smoothly. Everything felt underwater and razor-sharp at the same time, like I was drowning in broken glass. Madison stood in the doorway, still wearing her backpack from school. 12 years old and already 5'6", taller than most kids in her grade. She had David's dark hair and olive complexion, but thank God, she had my green eyes and my nose. At least I could look at her without seeing only him. Baby, go upstairs. I need a minute. My voice cracked halfway through. She didn't move. Just stood there, backpack straps still on her shoulders, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. Too calm. Too steady. Too knowing for a kid who should be thinking about math homework and whatever TV show 12-year-olds obsessed over these days. He took it, didn't he? Her voice was flat, matter of fact, like she was commenting on the weather. The college money. My throat closed up. How did you? I heard you fighting last week. Madison let her backpack slide off and hit the floor with a thud. She walked closer, her sneakers squeaking slightly on the tile. When you thought I was asleep. I came down for water and heard him yelling about needing a fresh start. About feeling trapped. About how you'd suffocated him for 15 years. The tears came then, hot and angry and so humiliating I wanted to disappear. I was the mother. I was supposed to protect her from this. From knowing her father was the kind of man who'd steal from his own daughter's future and run off with someone barely older than a college graduate. Maddie, I'm so sorry. I'll fix this, I swear. I'll get another job, maybe 2 jobs, we'll rebuild it all. I promise you'll still go to college. Mom. She put her small hand over mine. Her fingers were sticky from something, probably the strawberry candy she always kept stashed in her jacket pocket. It's okay. I took care of it. I stopped mid-sob, the air catching in my lungs. What? Madison smiled. But it wasn't her normal smile, the sweet gap-toothed grin I'd been seeing since she was a toddler. This one had edges. Sharp, calculated edges that didn't belong on a 12-year-old's face. Last month, remember when Dad let me use his laptop for my social studies project? The one on economics. She pulled out a chair and sat down across from me, crossing her arms on the table like we were about to have a normal conversation. He went to take a shower and left his email open. I saw messages from her. Christina with a K and a heart emoji. She said the name like it was coated in poison. They were planning this. The whole thing. He'd been moving money around for weeks. Months, actually. Creating accounts I'd never heard of. Transferring funds to places with names I had to Google. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I could hear the pulse in my ears. Madison, you shouldn't have. So I took care of it. She pulled out her phone, tapped the screen a few times with the ease of someone who'd grown up with technology as a second language, and showed it to me. Bank transfers. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Small amounts, nothing big enough to trigger fraud alerts, all flowing to an account number I didn't recognize. Whose account is that? Before I go further, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I like to know how far my stories are reaching, and a like and subscribe means a lot to small channels like ours and will keep these stories coming. Now let's continue. Mine. Well, technically Grandma Grace's. I called her after I found the emails. Told her everything. Madison's smile grew wider, more satisfied. She helped me set it up. Said any granddaughter smart enough to notice her father was a cheating thief deserved proper financial planning. Grandma's cool like that. I stared at my daughter. My 12-year-old daughter who apparently had more street smarts than I'd accumulated in 37 years. More than David had in 42. How much did you? More than the college fund. Way more. She tilted her head, and something in that gesture reminded me of David when he was plotting business deals. Cold. Strategic. See, he had this offshore account where he'd been hiding money. From his company. From you. From the IRS, probably. I made sure to leave just enough so that when he gets wherever he's going and tries to access everything. She trailed off, but that smile said everything her words didn't. My phone rang, the sound cutting through the kitchen like a knife. David's name flashed on the screen. His photo, the one from our last anniversary dinner, him smiling like he loved me, stared up at me. I looked at Madison. She looked at me. Then she nodded once, sharp and definitive, and I answered. You bitch. His scream was so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. Even Madison flinched. What did you do? Where's my money? The accounts are empty. I'll kill you, I swear to God, I heard Christina with a K in the background, her perfect voice going shrill and panicked. David, the hotel wants payment now. They're saying all your cards are declining. They're threatening to call the police. Not me, David. My voice came out steady now. Cold as winter lake ice. I didn't do anything. I hung up. Madison was still smiling. Then the doorbell rang, 3 sharp chimes that echoed through the house. When I opened the front door, my mother-in-law Grace stood there in her perfectly tailored suit, her silver hair immaculate as always. Behind her stood 2 police officers, their badges catching the late afternoon sun. Hello, Sarah dear, Grace said, her voice warm as honey and twice as deadly. We need to talk about my son. Grace walked into my house like she owned it, which, given what I was learning about my family, she might actually have helped pay for without me knowing. The 2 officers followed her, their boots heavy on the hardwood floor David had insisted on refinishing last year. Mrs. Mitchell, I'm Officer Chen. This is Officer Rodriguez. The shorter one spoke, his voice professional but not unkind. We need to ask you some questions about your husband's whereabouts. My stomach dropped. Did something happen to him? Not exactly. Grace settled onto the couch, crossing her legs with the grace of someone who'd attended finishing school in the 1960s. David called me an hour ago. Hysterical. Screaming about theft and betrayal and making some very unwise threats. Madison appeared at the top of the stairs, silent as a ghost. I'd forgotten she'd gone up there. Threats against you, ma'am, Officer Rodriguez added, looking at me. Your mother-in-law was concerned enough to contact us. Grace's perfectly manicured hand waved dismissively. My son has always been dramatic. Gets it from his father. But when he started screaming about how he'd make you pay, how he'd take Madison and disappear where I'd never find them. She paused, and for the first time since I'd known her, I saw genuine anger flash across her face. Well, that crossed a line. He can't take Madison. The words came out fierce, protective. He abandoned us. He emptied our daughter's college fund and ran off with his mistress. We know. Officer Chen pulled out a notebook. Mrs. Grace Mitchell provided us with some interesting documentation. Bank transfers, emails, a rather detailed timeline of your husband's activities over the past 6 months. I looked at Grace, really looked at her. She sat there in her Chanel suit, pearl earrings catching the light, looking like the perfect wealthy grandmother. But her eyes were steel. You've been investigating him? Someone had to. Grace's voice was crisp. I didn't raise my son to be a thief and a cheater, but here we are. When Madison called me 4 weeks ago and told me what she discovered, I knew I had to act. 4 weeks. I turned to see Madison descending the stairs slowly, her hand trailing on the banister. You've known for a month? 5 weeks, actually. Madison reached the bottom and came to stand beside me. I didn't want to tell you until I was sure. Until Grandma and I had everything ready. My head spun. While I'd been packing David's lunches and ironing his shirts and believing his excuses about late meetings, my 12-year-old daughter and my mother-in-law had been running a counterintelligence operation. The money Madison transferred, Officer Rodriguez said, it was taken from accounts that your husband established using company funds. Funds he embezzled from his employer over the course of 3 years. The room tilted. Embezzled. Nearly $2 million. Grace's voice was cold. My son, the CFO of a family-owned medical supply company, has been stealing from the business his grandfather built. The FBI will be involved by tomorrow morning. The transfers your daughter made, Officer Chen continued, technically saved that money from being lost to offshore accounts where it would have been nearly impossible to recover. She actually helped us build our case. Madison looked at me, and I saw fear there finally. Behind the calculating smile and the sharp edges, she was still just a kid who was scared I'd be angry. I pulled her into a hug. She smelled like strawberry candy and school hallways and something lemony from whatever body wash she'd started using. My brilliant, terrifying daughter. The college fund wasn't the only thing he took, was it? I asked Grace over Madison's head. No. He drained your joint savings, your emergency fund. He even took out a second mortgage on this house without your signature. Grace's voice softened slightly. David forged your name, Sarah. Multiple times. The man is facing serious federal charges. Officer Rodriguez cleared his throat. Which brings us to why we're here. Your husband made specific threats against you and your daughter. Given the circumstances, we'd like to offer police protection until he's located and taken into custody. Where is he now? My voice sounded distant in my own ears. Last transaction we traced was at a hotel in the Bahamas, Officer Chen said. But he's likely moving. Christina Chen, no relation, posted on Instagram from a marina about an hour ago. They're probably trying to get to a country without extradition. Grace stood, smoothing her skirt. They won't make it far. Christina's father is a federal judge, and when I called him this morning to inform him his daughter was aiding and abetting a fugitive. She smiled, cold and satisfied. Let's just say she'll be on the first flight home, and David will be alone with empty pockets in a foreign country. My phone rang again. David's number. My hand hovered over it. Answer it, Grace said. Officers, if you would. Officer Chen nodded and gestured for me to put it on speaker. I did. Sarah. David's voice was different now. Not angry. Desperate. Broken. Sarah, please. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I'll come home, we'll fix this. Just put the money back. Please. No. Sarah, they left me here. Christina's gone. The hotel is demanding payment. I can't. His voice cracked. Please. I'm your husband. You were my husband. My voice was steady. You stopped being my husband when you chose her. When you stole from our daughter. When you forged my name and gambled our life away. I'll fix it. I'll make it right. The FBI is looking for you, David. Grace's voice cut through. Turn yourself in. Silence. Then, Mother. Yes, dear. I'm here. And I've made sure you'll face everything you've earned. The line went dead. Officer Rodriguez's radio crackled. He listened, then looked at us. Bahamian police just picked up David Mitchell at the marina. He's being held for extradition. Madison grabbed my hand and squeezed. Then Grace's phone rang. She looked at the screen, and her face went white. It's the hospital, she whispered. David's father. She answered, listened for 10 seconds, and her legs seemed to give out. Officer Chen caught her before she fell. He's had a stroke, Grace said, her voice shaking. They don't know if he'll make it through the night. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and desperation, that particular combination of bleach and fear that no amount of air freshener could cover. I sat in the ICU waiting room with Grace on one side and Madison on the other, watching the clock tick past midnight. Robert Mitchell, my father-in-law, the man who'd walked me down the aisle when my own father refused to come, was dying 3 doors down. The stroke had been massive. The doctors used words like catastrophic and minimal brain activity and other phrases that meant we were waiting for the end. And David was in a holding cell in Nassau, screaming at guards and lawyers about how he needed to see his father. He doesn't deserve to be here. Grace's voice was paper-thin, fragile in a way I'd never heard from her. She'd aged 10 years in the last 3 hours. Robert worked his entire life to build that company, to build a legacy for David. And this is how my son repays him. Madison had fallen asleep against my shoulder, her phone clutched in her hand. Even in sleep, she looked tense, ready to wake and fight if needed. Mrs. Mitchell? A nurse appeared, young and exhausted. You can see him now. But, she hesitated. It won't be long. His vitals are declining. Grace stood, straightened her suit jacket even though it was already perfect, and walked toward Robert's room with her spine straight and her head high. Pure steel wrapped in Chanel. I stayed with Madison, watching her sleep, wondering how my 12-year-old had become the strongest person I knew. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Please. Let me talk to him before he dies. I'm his son. David. Somehow he'd gotten access to a phone. My finger hovered over the delete button. Then I thought about Robert, about the man who'd taught me to play chess, who'd held Madison when she was born and cried tears of joy, who'd never been anything but kind to me. I called the number back. Sarah. David's voice was hoarse, broken. Thank you. God, thank you. I'm not doing this for you. I kept my voice low so I wouldn't wake Madison. Your father is dying. He deserves to hear your voice one last time, even if you don't deserve to give it to him. I know. I know what I did. I know I destroyed everything. You don't know the half of it. I stood, walking to the window overlooking the parking lot. The company he built. The FBI seized the accounts. Employees might not make payroll. People who worked for your father for 30 years might lose their jobs because you couldn't keep your hands out of the till. Silence on the other end. But that's not even the worst part, David. The worst part is that your daughter, your 12-year-old daughter, had to be the adult. She had to protect herself because she knew her father wouldn't. I never meant. You never meant to get caught. That's different. I watched an ambulance pull up to the emergency entrance, lights flashing in the dark. I'm going to put you on video call. You're going to tell your father you love him. And then you're going to hang up and never contact Madison or me again unless it's through lawyers. Do you understand? Yes. His voice cracked. Can I talk to Maddie? I looked at my daughter, curled up in the uncomfortable waiting room chair, looking younger than her 12 years. No. You lost that right. I walked to Robert's room. Grace sat beside the bed, holding her husband's hand. Robert's breathing was labored, each breath a struggle. Machines beeped softly, monitoring his journey toward the end. Grace, I said softly. David's on the phone. I thought Robert might want to hear him. Grace's face hardened, but she nodded. Put it on speaker. I did, holding the phone near Robert's ear. Dad. David's voice filled the quiet room. Dad, it's me. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. I love you. Please, please know I love you. Robert's eyes didn't open, but his fingers twitched, just slightly, in Grace's hand. I messed up everything you built, everything you trusted me with. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need you to know, you were the best father anyone could ask for. Everything good in me came from you. A tear rolled down Robert's weathered cheek. His breathing changed. Slowed. The machines began to alarm, but Grace waved the nurses away. I love you, Dad. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Robert took one more breath, then stopped. The monitor flatlined, the sound piercing and final. Grace pressed her face to her husband's hand and sobbed, her composure finally breaking. I ended the call without another word to David. 3 days later, I stood in a cemetery under gray skies that threatened rain but never delivered. Robert's funeral was attended by hundreds, employees, friends, business partners, people whose lives he'd touched over 7 decades. David wasn't there. The Bahamian government had approved his extradition, but he was being held without bail pending trial. The FBI had added charges: embezzlement, wire fraud, tax evasion. His lawyer said he was looking at 20 years minimum. Christina had flipped on him immediately, providing evidence in exchange for immunity. Turned out she'd been recording their conversations for months, planning her own exit strategy. David had been played by everyone, including the mistress he'd destroyed his life for. Madison stood beside me in her black dress, holding my hand. She hadn't cried yet, just stood there, watching her grandfather's casket being lowered into the ground, her face unreadable. After the service, Grace pulled us aside. I need to show you something. She handed me a folder. Robert's will. He updated it 2 months ago. I opened it, scanning the legal language until I found the relevant section. Robert had left everything, the house, his personal accounts, his shares in the company, to Madison. Not to David. To his 12-year-old granddaughter, in a trust that I would manage until she turned 25. He knew, Grace said quietly. Not about the embezzlement, but about David's character. He told me he'd seen changes in our son. Recklessness, arrogance. He said Madison had more of his spirit than David ever did. The folder also contained something else. Documents showing that the money Madison had transferred was being returned to the company accounts. That Robert had set up a separate college fund for Madison months ago, one David never knew existed. That he'd protected his granddaughter even before she'd known she needed protection. There's more. Grace pulled out another paper. The board voted yesterday. With Robert's shares going to Madison's trust, and my shares, we control the company. We're cleaning house. Everyone involved in hiding David's theft is gone. We're implementing new oversight. And she looked at me directly. I'd like you to join the board. Madison's too young, but you can represent her interests. And honestly, Sarah, you've shown more integrity in the last week than most people show in a lifetime. I'm a second-grade teacher. I don't know anything about running a medical supply company. You don't have to run it. We have people for that. But you understand loyalty, honesty, protecting what matters. Grace's eyes were fierce. Those are the qualities Robert valued most. Madison tugged my sleeve. Mom, there's something I need to tell you. We walked away from the crowd, toward a large oak tree at the edge of the cemetery. The money I moved, Madison said. It wasn't just Dad's offshore accounts. I found other things too. My heart sank. What kind of things? Dad wasn't working alone. There were 3 other executives helping him. They were all stealing together, planning to blame everything on Dad's assistant if they got caught. She pulled out her phone, showing me files and emails. I copied everything before I moved the money. I was going to tell Grandma Grace, but then Grandpa got sick, and… Madison! I knelt down to her eye level. You've been carrying this alone? She nodded, and finally, tears came. I was so scared, Mom. I didn't know if I did the right thing. What if I made everything worse? What if Grandpa died because of the stress and it's my fault? I pulled her into my arms, this brilliant, brave, terrified child who'd been forced to grow up too fast. None of this is your fault. Your grandfather's stroke wasn't because of you. Your father's choices weren't because of you. You saved us, baby. You saved everything that could be saved. But Dad's going to prison. Yes, because of what he did. Not because of what you did. I held her tighter. You did the right thing. The hard thing. The brave thing. We stood there under the oak tree, holding each other while the funeral guests slowly dispersed and Grace spoke quietly with the board members who'd come to pay respects. That night, back at home, the home that was actually ours now, the mortgage paid off by Robert's estate, I tucked Madison into bed like I used to when she was small. Mom, she said as I turned off the light. Do you think Dad ever really loved us? I thought about that. About 15 years of marriage, about the good moments mixed with the lies, about a man who could steal from his own daughter's future. I think he loved himself more than he loved anyone else. And I think that's the saddest thing in the world. I smoothed her hair back. But we're going to be okay. Better than okay. Because I took care of it. Because we took care of each other. 2 months later, David pleaded guilty to all charges. 23 years in federal prison. The 3 executives Madison had identified were arrested. The company recovered most of the stolen funds. Robert's legacy was preserved. Madison started 8th grade early, skipping a year because she tested off the charts. She joined the chess club and the debate team. She was still just a kid, but a kid who'd learned that sometimes you have to save yourself. Grace sold her big house and bought a smaller place 3 blocks from us. She had dinner with us twice a week and taught Madison about investments and board meetings and how to spot a liar. And me. I stayed teaching 2nd grade. I joined the company board, representing Madison's interests. I learned about business and finance and how to read people better. But mostly, I learned that revenge doesn't always look like destruction. Sometimes it looks like a 12-year-old girl with a smartphone and the courage to save her own future. Sometimes it looks like choosing yourself when someone else has already chosen to abandon you. And sometimes, it looks like building something better from the ashes of what someone else tried to burn down. David sent letters from prison. I never opened them. Madison did once, then threw it away. Nothing worth reading, she said. And we moved on. Together.